Welcome to episode 62 of the Blood Brothers podcast. Tonight, Rob and Sean are not here, but we are joined by Jonathan Whitelaw. Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be here. Mighty big shoes to fill, but I'll try my best.
I'm sure you'll do beautifully. You've already got a better voice than both of them.
Oh, bless you.
And in our guest spot tonight, we have got Sunday Times and USA Today best-selling author of In a Cottage in a Wood, The Woman Next Door, amongst others, and the latest release, Sleep Tight. It is C.S. Green.
Hello.
Hello, it is nice to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me as well.
What should we call you for the duration?
Just call me Caroline. It's very confusing being me, but yeah, just call me.
Thank you very much for being here tonight. For those that have not yet read Sleep Tight, please could you give us a little flavour of what it is about?
Right, well, basically there's a serial killer on the loose who seems to be targeting people who have sleep disorders like sleep paralysis, which is a horrible thing where you think you're awake and you're not, and you feel like something's pressing down on you. And hypnagogic nightmares, which are another delight, where you can see somebody who's in the room. Again, you think you're wide awake. So this is happening. Nobody can quite work out how this is going on. And my young police detective, DC Rose Gifford, has had a bit of an unusual past in that she grew up in a house run by a fake medium, her mother, who used to basically sort of con people. And Rose has always really hated everything about her upbringing and thought joining the police would get her as far away as possible from anything supposedly spooky, particularly since she actually does have some abilities she's rather in denial about in that regard. She starts to investigate the case, and she makes a discovery that there's a branch of the Met Police called UCIT, the Uncharted Crimes Investigation Team, which exists to look into what they call off-grid crimes. So it's anything that has a slightly odd or even supernatural flavour to it. And Rose gets caught up in this whole big investigation. So that's kind of a bit of a rambly,
That's great.
rambly pitch for it there.
It was very enjoyable. Phoebe sent me a proof copy a while ago, and then I got this one from the wonderful Books for Vaccines thing that Phoebe did. So lovely to have a nice hardback copy. Where did the idea come from? Because you have written in many genres now, haven't you?
Yeah, I guess I don't know whether to some extent the genres have always been kind of in a sort of thriller. Pretty much. I mean, I started out writing YA fiction, and they were all kind of had a sort of thrillery mystery sort of aspect. And the very first book I wrote actually had a supernatural storyline, so I've kind of come full circle. And I've written these psychological thrillers like In a Cottage, The Woman Next Door, and so on. And this was a kind of another side step, really. And I think I wanted to do something different. I felt like I just wanted to write something that felt a bit more daring. I don't know. And the idea came because I've just always been fascinated by sleep, because I do get some of these weird things. I still do. I actually have them. Happened to me a couple of days ago, in fact.
Like me.
Which is kind of awful. I've talked about it so often, but
I get night terrors. I'm notorious for night terrors, particularly when I'm stressed. And apparently stress brings on. My wife's a psychiatrist, and it wasn't. It's one of those things you can't go undiagnosed from having a night terror, because if you get up in the middle of the night and you're shouting and screaming and thinking that there's a bomb going to go off, as did once happen to me actually when I was at university, to the point where I ran next door, got my flatmate out of bed. There's a bomb in my drawer. And then he said, "What the hell are you doing, Jonathan?" And then I came to. But I mean, you'll know exactly, Caroline. It's terrifying. It's really, really terrifying.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear that, because I think that's subtly different again from what I have, because mine is always it's more of a split second, feels longer, but it's more of a split second moment. And the thing that I have most commonly is that I'm dropping off to sleep, and I'll see somebody standing in high definition detail, leaning over the bed. And in just in that sort of seconds when it probably takes place to happen, I think, no, come on, you're just having that weird freaky dream thing. And every time then something will go, no, this time it's not that, this time it's real. And I wake up screaming and shouting the house down. My poor family have got very used to it now. So yeah, but yours sounds like it's a bit more immersive, really, which is
yeah. I mean, that particular example that I told you about there, like I actually opened my side drawer and could see the device with a red LED ticking down. Terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Is that? I mean, Caroline, is that something that you found? I mean, how do you feel, living with something like that? And was there a sort of cathartic process going through writing this novel? Was it almost therapeutic to do something like this, or is it purely just an inspiration sort of thing?
Well, the funny thing is, I didn't expect it to be, but the whole period of time when I was writing the book, from including the various edits, I didn't have one episode of this. My busy little bee of a subconscious was just kind of somehow being satisfied by this, writing about this phenomenon. It was really strange. And then as soon as I got beyond the sort of final copy edits, it kind of came back. I mean, I probably do have it in a very minor way about once a week. And it might just be like a real split second of kind of waking up with a bit of a start.
Yep.
I've only had sleep paralysis a few times, and that's really, really horrible. Have either of you ever had that?
No, I've certainly never had it, and I've only ever read about it. I mean, I've got absolutely no idea what it's like. What is it like? Are you happy to talk about it?
Absolutely. Well, I remember the very first time I had it, and I was at university, and I probably had a lot to drink, because I did for most of the things in university, to be frank. I don't really remember, but all I know is I sort of came to, I could see my bedroom absolutely clearly, I could see everything, and I realized that I was completely unable to move. And you have this unbelievably horrible feeling of dread and horror, like there is something so bad in that room that you've got to kind of escape from. And I thought, if I can just put my lamp on, and I always remember that there was like this sort of effort of like leaning my hand, and it was like, a force field was in the way.
Yeah.
And I got sort of halfway there, and then I suddenly woke up and went crashing out, knocking the lamp over, because I'd sort of gone halfway. But yeah, you have this kind of, and it's fascinating. I love things like this. They fascinate me, because apparently they think it's behind so many ghost stories, and they think it's even the explanation for some alien abduction stories, where people have had a kind of funny combination of the sleep paralysis and a really vivid nightmare. But they see somebody, they can't move, they think something bad's happening to them. So I just think it's just interesting, It's horrible, but
it's always the same, though, isn't it? It's always the most horrible things that happen to us are usually the most interesting, and then in turn, particularly as writers, we tend to turn them into something to try and entertain other people. Yeah, it's fascinating stuff, though. Really, really fascinating. Like I said, my wife's a psychiatrist. I studied psychology at uni, and I mean, the brain and the mind and two very different things, obviously, are so powerful, and they're completely uncharted, really. We've only really scratched the surface, and the idea that it can create these types of scenarios, because that's the thing. I've always been a very, very vivid dreamer. Always been a vivid dreamer, not necessarily from a terror point of view, but I always say that my kind of dreams, I can wake up, depending on what it is, I can wake up and it's perfectly rendered. That's the phrase that I down to the point of the grain in the wood on the desk, faces, people walking down streets and things, and it's incredible. It's really,
I think
really
it's very common in writers, actually, since writing this book. The number of writers who told me they've had some kind of an experience of this sort it's been amazing. So many people. My wonderful editor, Phoebe Morgan, she gets sleep paralysis, so she was, completely got it, the whole concept of the book. Loads and loads of writer friends. But I think it's interesting is there's so much we don't understand about it. But I think, in a way, that idea of this sort of funny in-between state between being awake and being asleep, that kind of liminal sort of sense of things, I find fascinating. And that's also what I was hoping to do with the supernatural stuff, because I didn't want to make it full out on fantasy like the absolutely brilliant Ben Iranovich books, which are wonderful.
Yeah.
They're proper fantasy. I wanted this to be a proper gritty police procedural with this otherness, this kind of, it's our world. It looks completely like our world, but there is something that's there that not everybody is aware of. People in the book discuss it just the way we do. So it's very much of this world. And that was very important to me to do that.
Yeah. Was there any trepidation going from what you had been writing? Like, did you have conversations before with your editor saying, I kind of want to step away a little bit from that and do this instead? Or did you submit it kind of blind?
No, it felt very brave at the time, because I'd come to the end of my 3-book my contract with HarperCollins, and you know when you get to that sort of, when you're going to have a conversation at some point and you haven't had it yet. And I just decided that I wanted to do something really different. And I came up with it. And what actually happened, I've told this story over and over again, so sorry if anybody's listening who's heard me bang on about this before. But what happened was I came up with the sleep storyline first, and I was talking to my very good friend, writer friend, Emma Horton. And she said, yeah, that sounds great, but how are you going to handle the supernatural bit? And that's not what I meant at all. And I was like, oh, I felt really deflated. And then that night I was getting into bed, and this little voice just went in my ear, what if you did make it supernatural though? And it seemed like a really daring thing. And actually I'm now finding that there's quite a bit of it about, actually. There's quite a lot of that. I think there's a bit of something in the air. My agent, Mark Stanton, Stan the Man, is just brilliant for this stuff. He's so encouraging. And I said, I've got this really mad idea. And he went, yeah, I love it. Do it. Someone will buy it.
That's exactly what you want.
Yeah. And anyway, my editor of HarperCollins was actually leaving. And then we ended up in this weird period of months and months and months when it was all up in the air. And I just wrote it. I just wrote the whole thing without even having a deal. And then I did get it, which was great, 3 books. But I just wanted to do it. It felt like something I really, really wanted to write.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm pleased you did. Did you have to do much research into the paranormal stuff, or the sort of the supernaturally stuff, or did you kind of have an idea that you didn't care about the rules so much?
Yeah, I did a bit, and I'm a bit of a wuss, so I terrified myself by watching a few things, like the Enfield Poltergeist that was on telly. That was really scary. And Will Storr, who I just is one of my heroes, who wrote the Science of Storytelling and various other things. He wrote a book called Will Storr versus either versus the paranormal or versus the supernatural. Apologies for not getting the title right. And it was just a really great investigation of all those kind of topics. And I read quite a few things. I had to do much more research into the police stuff. I did a lot of research into that because I was terrified about getting things wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sure I did. Sure, I still did.
Is that something? I mean, Caroline, you're a journalist. Is there an element of being a journalist, and obviously, I'm a journalist as well, and it happens to me. Like there are certain times, particularly if you're writing crime novels, where you have to almost switch off that journalistic sense of accuracy. You know, and yes, I can hear people scoffing already with the term journalism and accuracy used in the same sentence. I can hear them. I can hear the baying mob at the door. But I find that at times you have to stop writing like a journalist, or stop being a journalist and write like a writer, because they are very, very different beasts. You mentioned there that very, very extensive research into the police element of it. You know, was it clearly a conscious decision? Was that brought on because of the journalism, the journalist in you, or was it more the writer in you, or was it kind of 50-50?
Well, I haven't done any journalism for quite a while, and to be honest with you, the driving force on that front was more the fact that I am married to a criminal lawyer. Right. He does the same job that Imran Mahmood does, a brilliant guest you had on last time, and he has basically kind of ruined every TV program ever. Everything that's wrong, and getting annoyed so often. And it's a rare thing when he sort of, I can sort of see that he's starting to kind of draw back at his seat in a disapproving way. Like, this is bloody rubbish. But it did feel important to me to get it right. And I was even from the little bits and pieces I've picked up about the criminal justice system from being married to a lawyer, I was starting to find myself, getting irritated by usually. But I mean, some people don't mind. And I've had this conversation with lots of crime writer friends. some of them take the attitude that, you know, it's fiction, it doesn't have to be that realistic, and I think that's fair enough. But for me, I want it to be as realistic as possible. So yeah, I did loads. I even bought the blooming murder manual, whatever it's called, which is the actual police great big manual on practices in, you know, in what they actually do when a murder takes place. All sorts.
That's the thing about crime. I think crime fiction as a whole is that it's all under this massive banner of crime, but you've got so many different elements of it, you know, that are down to the fingernails, deathly accurate, and then you've got maybe other writers that will take a little bit more of a liberal system towards, you know, I mean, I was going to call them storytellers there. You know, all writers are storytellers, and that implies a sort of kind of fantasy element of it. But you know, it's incredible, and going between them, particularly, I mean, even on this podcast, you've got these, you know, writers vary from episode to episode, where they've got that different approach to research.
Well, absolutely. I mean, and you both have detectives. You know, how do you both handle that? Do you go for absolute dotting all the I's?
It's one of those things. I think I always get frightened with these types of questions, because if I say one thing, then someone's going to get me on Twitter and say, "Oh well, hold on a minute, Jonathan, you didn't do this in chapter 14 of that," but, you know, in that voice. I don't like to say that I don't like to say that I don't do research, because that makes me sound like a lazy writer. But I clearly don't do as much research as a lot of other writers, probably a lot of other writers in this room right now, and it shows. But it's I think it depends on the subject. I think it depends on the subject. So my second Parker's book that's with Red Dog that's I'm waiting on the edits coming back at the moment. I did a lot more research for that. I don't want to go into too many details, obviously, but I did a lot more research into one particular element of that, of the overall crime story, than I think I've probably ever done for anything that I've ever written. And it was head and shoulders. It was head and shoulders above anything else that I've written, because it needed to be. You know, there was no way of fudging it. Almost, you know, if you tried to fudge something like this, then it would sort of, you know, open up a whole load of plot holes, and you'd see through it. It would be as transparent as Granny's underpants, as they say. So it needed to be done. The hard work needed to be done. The graft needed to be done, and hopefully I did enough of it. Otherwise, it's going to be a lengthy edit process.
Come on now.
How about you? What's your approach to it?
With the first one, I didn't really know what I was doing at all with anything. So I researched sort of the basics and found out. And I think after talking to Neil Lancaster, he said a lot of it is paperwork. So actually, if you cut all that bit out and at least get some of the structure of the initial crime scene and then the little steps after, it's almost self-explanatory.
He's so great. He's been such a help.
Yeah, he's really supportive and stuff. But I think he read my second one and said the police stuff was spot on. So I thought I didn't do loads of research and I seemed to be doing okay. So right, I don't think people want to read step by step.
No, they really don't. I think for me, I wanted to feel secure knowing stuff, and then I could just tell the story without worrying. I think
that's exactly it. It's, you know, at the end of the day, you're the one that's got to tell the story that's in your head, and you know, there's the mechanism, isn't there? The mechanism is the crime fiction and the characters that you're telling it, and I couldn't agree more, Caroline. That's exactly it. That's what research is, isn't it? It's giving you the confidence boost to carry on and go and tell the story. Yeah, I completely agree. Totally agree.
And I have made, and even with the best will in the world, I'm not going to say what it is. I made a mistake in the book. It's not even a police thing, but I made a mistake about something which I had checked very carefully, and I don't know what happened. I somehow, in getting from brain to page, I did something to change the thing. I don't know what I did. And I've had like two very specialist people, but highly specialist, saying they were quite upset, which made me feel awful.
Do you know where that is a badge of honor, though? I mean, that's where the fiction element comes in, isn't it? You know, that we writers rely entirely on our poetic license and stuff, and I think Yeah, I think so. It's a badge of honour that, you know, nobody's perfect, as they say.
There's always going to be somebody.
Always someone. It's like on
always.
Pointless, isn't it? When you watch Pointless and someone gives a really, really good answer that even you didn't think of, and it goes up, the totalizer goes all the way down, and one person, they're on for 10 grand, one person, that bloody person, you know. Yeah.
That's like a sort of writer's confidence, that.
Yeah.
The one bad review against all good ones, it just drains away.
Less money in it, right enough.
Yeah, that's true.
Can we ask about your publication journey? We sort of ask this for everyone because I think our listeners, and a lot of them are writers that haven't been published yet, and people that are aspiring, and it's always really interesting and inspiring to hear journey. So yes.
Yeah. It's a bit long-winded. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I started out like quite a long time ago, and I wrote a sort of women's fiction, as the very broad sort of genre has it. I wrote this book, and I just enjoyed it so much. I just didn't have any thought about where I was going. I just had the best time writing this book. And I sent it out to, I got the Writers and Artists Yearbook, and I did all the things you're meant to do, and I sent it out. And one very famous agent, who's actually no longer with us, she'd actually died, a very famous agent, said, I like this and I'd like to see the whole thing. And I had lots of rejections, so I pretty much thought that was it. I thought, you know, brilliant, I'll sit back and wait for my, you know, fantastic book deal. Don't need to do anything else in the meantime. I did have a baby, so I was quite busy, but but I just thought, you know, there's no point starting a new book because I'm going to be, you know, probably working on edits and things. I had an idea that I was playing with, and I fiddled with this idea. I never really wrote anything properly. Killed the idea, stone dead by doing that. And it took a year for her to reject me. And I waited for a year. I mean, what an absolute numpty. Now I just think, I can't believe I did that, but I waited, and I honestly thought, well, there's no way after all this time that she's going to reject me. I thought she's bound to just like take me on and kind of, you know, find the diamond in the rough and polish me up and send me out into the world. No, she wasn't going to do that. And she rejected me. So I thought, oh, okay, this writing malarkey is a bit harder than I thought. So I was reading a lot of children's books, like sort of middle grade and young YA fiction. So I wrote a book, which I was very proud of. And I went to the Winchester Writers Conference and entered a competition, and I won first prize. Yay, this is exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, very exciting. Sent the book out, not one single sniff of interest.
Really?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
Not one. Nobody wanted it. So by this point, I'm starting to think, it really is harder than I thought. So I wrote something else. And this time I got a lot of call-ins, but I had things like 2 different agents got me rewriting the book in a totally opposite ways. There's like a great big supernatural sort of reveal that happens halfway through. One of them wanted me to put it in the title and make it up front and center and not a twist. Rewrote the book to do that. Another one said, no, you have to make it, you have to hide it. I rewrote it again to do that. It still didn't take me on. And I got rejected 37 times by agents, and I was starting to get really, really sort of upset about the whole thing. And I literally thought, I'm going to have one more go. I'm going to send this bloody book out one more time. And I sent it directly to a publisher called Piccadilly Press, children's publisher. And it took months and months for anything to happen. I started writing something else in the meantime, and it was probably 6 months from me sending it out to them giving me a book deal. So I got an agent after that, children's agent. And then so I wrote these 4 YA books, and they did well in that I won awards for them, which was lovely. And, you know, I got a little bit of national press coverage for them. And then one of them was on Open Book on Radio 4, and all these lovely things happened. But I didn't make a single penny. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was unbelievable how bad the money was in that world. And it was just depressing. I never went into it for money, but I'd hoped to not end up in sort of negative equity for being published. And I just got a bit fed up with it all. And I thought, right, I'm going to have a go. I was reading a lot of psychological thrillers. I used to read them for a scout, a foreign rights scout. And I thought, I'm going to have a go at writing something like that. And I wrote what became The Woman Next Door. And wanted to get an agent who represented adult books, so I got a different agent, Mark Stan, and who signed me immediately, which is very gratifying. And he was convinced that we were going to have a massive auction for this book. Really, really was sure this book was going to be huge. And it got rejected by everybody. Oh. Absolutely. And I couldn't believe I was back there again, just rejected by everybody. Worked on it a little bit, sent it out again, rejection. I think he was as upset as me, actually. He was devastated because he was so convinced that this book was going to be huge. And then we got an offer from what at that point was called Killer Reads, which was an imprint of HarperCollins. I think it's called One More Page now, I think something like that. And it was a digital only. It was like the sort of bookature model. And Stan had never really worked in that way before. And at the time, it didn't feel like a proper sort of book deal because there wasn't going to really be a paperback or anything. But it seemed better than nothing. So we were like, okay, fair enough, you know. And then my editor, Sarah Hodgson, was amazing, and it was a really good experience. But what happened was that a few months before it was supposed to be coming out, I got a very excited phone call from my editor to say that in the big sales meeting thing that they pitched to the supermarkets, Asda decided they wanted my book. So they had to rush to produce a trade paperback because there wasn't going to be one. And then the book went on to do really, really well and was like the #1 book on iTunes for a while, and did really well in America and everything. So it's been such a roller coaster. I mean, there's been so many things since then, but we'd be here all night. But yeah, total roller coaster. And I think it's going to be that way, you know.
That's incredible. Yeah, and do you know, it's such a subjective business, isn't it? Writing, you know, I don't need to tell you guys that it is such a subjective business, and even people that are completely immersed in it and are successful within the industry clearly can be wrong. Both wrong, you know, wrong on their part, but from the other side of from the publishing element of it, completely wrong as well, as you've proved, Caroline, in that, you know, that there's a novel that's gone on and been a massive success despite having been rejected. Very foolishly, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And it was really interesting because it did make me have a lot of faith in my agent, because I thought he saw something there, and he was so shocked that it didn't happen. It didn't unfold in the way that he thought it was going to, but he was kind of right, because he thought it was going to sell, you know.
Of course.
So yeah, sometimes things happen in a funny roundabout way. They don't. It's not a sort of journey that just goes up and up and up. It's like an up and down, up and down, up and down, you know. I think even the most successful people probably feel that way, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I mean, you guys will know this from blog tours and people asking you and stuff like that. Exactly. Aspiring writers and people that want to write, people want to get published and stuff like that. What's the best bit of advice that you can give? And it's exactly that, Caroline. I completely agree with you. Is that it's not a linear pattern. It's not an A to B. Very, very rarely is it A to B for anyone in this industry. It's up, down, roundabout, back and forward and back in time. Sometimes it's.
And I was saying this to somebody the other day, you know, what? So say you've got the absolute dream scenario in that you've got one of your books has been adapted for Netflix for some huge film, and what if that film is just universally panned and everybody hates it? You might sort of think you might sort of think, well, I wouldn't care. I'd take the money and it would just be great to see my name on the side of a bus. Actually, I think you probably would. I think you'd get that would be a whole other level of stress that you'd experience as this. I mean, I'm saying this, I don't know whether I would just like to see my name on the side of a bus, but I'm sure, you know, for the real megastars, they have their own set of worries.
Totally. It's interestingly, actually, I someone that I know from school, they went on to do a bit of acting and what have you, and they ended up in a situation not entirely dissimilar from that. And unless you're on that sort of elite, you know, that elite springboard where you're filming something to then go on and do something else that's already in the pipeline because you're constantly in demand, if you're using these opportunities to try and get to that level and it doesn't happen, you know, we're talking about negative equity. Sometimes it can be like that. Thankfully, they've done pretty well for themselves. but it was touch and go, you know. It is, and it can be, and it's the same. And listen, I suppose it's the same in every. It's the same across all the arts, I suppose, isn't it? It's just one of these things. But yeah, that lack of linear pathway. I think it builds character, though. I think, and I think, you know, you guys will be the same. I very, very rarely meet writers and editors and publishers and things who haven't gone round that route in some way, shape, or form. Some it's more up and down than others. Some it's more round the block than others. But you know, it makes. I think it builds a kinship, actually. I've certainly found that sort of kinship, and the classic one on Twitter obviously is the kind of hashtag writing community or writing community. You know, and you just have to look at that hashtag on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis, and you see the support that floods in from writers of all different genres, all different experiences, all different successes. It's quite heartwarming.
Supportive kind of world, I think.
Definitely. Absolutely. Thank God.
Yeah, otherwise we'd be done for. Your characters in this book are ones that, I mean, I think I read it the end of last year, possibly. I don't know when the proofs were sent out. But Rose is really stuck in my mind. And from the moment you meet her, she's sort of she says you can sod off too to someone who's driving an SUV, and it's just the most brilliant way to have, like, you're straight on her side. What's your sort of process for creating characters?
I always find that question really hard to answer, to be honest with you, because I don't know whether I don't know whether I have a process as such. I think they sort of come to me in different ways. I think I have to see them, and really often I think of like actors will I'll see somebody and I think, oh, that's what they look like. And for Rose, for some reason, I've been obsessed with her looking like the actress Jessie Buckley.
Oh yeah.
I don't know whether it was just somewhere subconscious, that film Wild Rose, where she's that amazing Scottish country singer, which I thought was such a fantastic film. She's actually Northern Irish, isn't she? So she's blindingly good at accents. But I don't know. There's just something about her that just, to me, that's what she looks like. I even sort of like got a copy sent to her. She hasn't. I don't think she's going to read it. Didn't reply.
She's a regular listener to the show, though. So there you go. It's a double whammy, isn't it? That's a proper cross media campaign of
I had to tell you something funny, because when I was writing my YA stuff, and one of my ones was sort of dystopian kind of theme called Cracks, and I just thought, you know what, I didn't have there was no publicity budget, there was nothing like that, the tiny company I was in, and I thought, I'm just going to send it off to a couple of places. So I sent it to one of the big film production companies in the UK. I just thought, well, you know, and I did this note, and I said, look, you know, the very least, maybe there's somebody who's got a teenager in the office, just give it to them, or give it to me, you know. And they sent me a letter. When I saw that I'd had this letter coming back, no, it was an email, sorry, I thought, oh my God, they've written to me. And it's actually said, we will not accept any unsolicited gifts. If you can you please direct us to what to do with this this item in 5 days, or we're going to destroy it. And I literally had an image of like a sort of roadrunner kind of, you know, like dynamite actually blowing thing. A bit harsh.
That's a little bit harsh. Treat it like it's a suspicious package. Good grief.
Book, for goodness sake.
And what did you email back?
I said, please don't destroy it. You know, maybe you could just you could please just give it to somebody or something. Anyway, they just never replied. So they probably, you know, somebody like Jonathan, like your dream with the ticking, you know, stuck it in that drawer.
Bloody hell. That is a bit po-faced.
Yeah. I know. So I hope Jessie Buckley hasn't done that with
controlled explosions in Northern Ireland. We love them.
Normally get a phone call. Yeah. Normally get your phone call 20 minutes beforehand, though. Do you know? proper SWAT and everything. The whole team. That wasn't a phone call. There wasn't a phone call.
It's a book. It's only a book.
Anyway, sorry, I've digressed horribly there. Yeah, so yeah, I think I had to kind of have a sense of what they look like, and the name's important, and then I have to think about their background and, you know, their whole kind of childhood thing, and I sort of build them in that way. Yeah, some of them come to me easier than others. Sometimes if I'm really struggling, I do kind of make myself do the little kind of character questionnaire that I use in classes, just to kind of do a little bit of background. There's a brilliant exercise actually, which I kind of slightly pinched, because I heard that Mike Leigh, the film director, when when the actors turn up on the first day of filming, apparently he tells them to go away and to think about what their character did on their 8th birthday. And I think that's, I do it in my city class as a writing exercise, because I think it's a really useful thing, because you're old enough at that age to have really very meaningful memories about things, and to notice a lot of things. And I don't know, I think things like that are great for developing characters and really getting under their skin, I think.
I agree.
Yeah,
I completely agree. It wasn't something that it wasn't something that I did regularly when I first started writing. And I mean, arguably, I've only really started doing it more recently in the last kind of 2 or 3 books, and it's been like such a cloud lifting. It's been like this brilliant revelation, because suddenly, you know, if you do that exercise, if you sit down and you've got like the note that says age, description, what they like, what they don't like, what they're allergic to, that type of thing. I think it certainly makes the writing process a little bit easier for me, because it's not putting that stress on your memory, and in turn, you're not getting edits back that say you've done this, Jonathan, in chapter 14, when in actual fact in chapter 2 you said that they weren't capable of this.
It just gives you a framework, doesn't it? It gives you
absolutely,
even if you don't use any of that information, it
absolutely
doesn't seem real in your mind, I think.
Even little things like in a conversation, if like your main character doesn't like a certain type of food, it like makes them more 3D, I think.
Yeah,
that's it. I mean, totally, because I mean, readers, we're all readers as well. That's the thing. That's the great thing about being a writer, is that you have to be a brilliant reader, and the more you read, the better you should become as a writer. If for nothing else, you're just nicking it from people, nicking stuff that you like. But I think I know instantly when I read a novel. I know instantly when I read a novel, and you pick that up. I think you pick that knowledge, a writer's knowledge of the character, up. Pretty early on. I think I can't think of any examples off the top of my head where I've kind of felt that do you know what, this character's not feeling. I can't think of too many where it's taken me till maybe 3/4 of the way through the book to be convinced that the writer has done that, has gotten to know the characters, because that's what they are. They're people, I suppose. It's voices. I mean, they might all come from your head, but
I think that's very true. I think if all the sort of criticism I might have of a book, if I don't like it, I don't think I ever really feel that. I don't think. It's interesting. Never thought about that before. Yeah.
Do your homework. That's the
do your homework, kids.
Do your homework. Stay in school. Do your homework.
It sounded like you were saying that to Caroline.
No, I was saying it to you, Chris. You've got reports to write.
I don't want to talk about reports. You mentioned that there are 3 books. So are we allowed to know anything about the second one?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the second one. I don't know. I always find it painful and horrible, the whole writing business. But for some reason, I really enjoyed this one. And my editor says she likes it even more than Sweet Time. So
dangerous territory. Dangerous territory. That's a proper sense of false security. That is.
Yeah, it's going to be this. I'm sure they'll announce this at some point. But anyway, I'm going to. It's going to be called The Whisper House.
Oh, nice.
Lovely.
It's about a poltergeist, a malevolent poltergeist who has got, well, I won't say anymore, but at the very beginning, they get called out to this house in Kentish Town where this slightly odd family are living, where really sort of unsettling, strange things are happening in the house, and they make a series of discoveries about the house that lead to dramatic events. I can't say anymore. but yeah, so that's and what was really interesting, and an interesting challenge with that one is it's really hard to do a ghost story and be original. And I absolutely love ghost stories, and I read so many. And I started listening to one recently on audiobook, which was highly recommended, an American one, highly recommended by some book blog I was reading. and it had every single trope in it. It had toys, it had a woman who drowned in the bloody pond outside the front, and it was so dispiriting. It had wet footprints in the hallway, and I just thought, oh, come on, I've read this book 50 times.
Yeah.
It was really challenging to think of different creepy things, and that was quite fun. It was hard though. I hope I have. Probably people will read it now and say, what, I've seen that 100 times before, but it was new to me.
I was going to ask Caroline, do you as a reader of that type of fiction, do you still get scared by stuff that you read, and also do you get scared by your own writing? And I don't mean I mean like as in with not a Jonathan Whitelaw scared by your own writing. Oh my God, how could anybody have written this? This is barely English. That not that type of scare. Yeah. That's a sole reserve of me. Trust me.
No, I definitely get that. I get the cold horrors quite often in that sense. No, I do get. Yeah, no, I can scare myself. I can definitely scare myself, and I can definitely. I'm an absolute wuss. I can definitely. But that's why it's. I think bloody hell, if you're not even scaring me, you're not working very hard.
Yeah.
And I remember. I mean, I absolutely adore The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. It's one of my absolutely most favourite books, and I literally was reading that one night at the time in my life when I had both children asleep in the room in bed with my husband. He was asleep. I was reading it, and I frightened the absolute crap out of myself. And I couldn't go to sleep because I was so scared. I was literally lying there sort of. And I thought, what do you think is going to happen? You're literally lying in the house with all these people. So yeah, I can definitely still get scared. I'm not really. I can't really cope with horror, like gory things. I don't like violent, gory stuff. I like under the skin, creepy. Yeah. Wow, that's the kind of thing I like, and I'm also terrified of.
Yeah, well, I'm like a dreadful scaredy cat, and don't think stuff bothers me until I like turn the light off to go to sleep, and then suddenly everything's like, well, what happens if that's in the room now and stuff like that. So I try to avoid it where I can until I remember when my little girl was like getting up in the night, so I had to go feed her and stuff. I was listening to Changeling by Matt Veselowski, about creepy woods and all sorts going on, and I like, where you don't know why you're doing it to yourself, but the story was so good that I was like, well, I need to. But it was great, but very scary.
Oh, I need to make a note of that one. Did you ever hear during the height of the worst part of the first lockdown, there was this wonderful podcast called the Scaredy Cats Podcast?
No,
I've not heard of it. No,
brilliant. It was two guys that normally did one called Reply All, and one of them was just never watched a horror film because he was too scared. The other one was a massive, passionate fan of horror films. So they had this little project whereby he would make him watch a whole series of films and then report back, including recording himself during some of them. And it was so funny, honestly. Highly recommend it.
What was it called?
It's called the Scaredy Cats Podcast.
Scaredy, I'm gonna have a listen.
It was so good.
I'm also terrible for it. I'm a curdly custard. I'm as yellow as a curdly custard can come. There's a big difference though, huge difference between that sort of kind of psychologically creepy novel and even a psychologically creepy film, and it's the old show don't tell argument, isn't it? And you can anticipate watching a film because it is so visual, and there's nothing left up to your imagination. Whereas I think even the parts that are meant to be left up to your imagination, there's still a degree of the nature of the art form that has got to tell you what's going on. Whereas I think if you sit down, exactly as you guys say, in a dark room, or indeed a light room, and then have to turn the lights out, it's all in there. You can't leave the cinema. You can't turn the TV off. It's all stuck in there.
And we've
dreadful. Why do we do it to ourselves? I don't know.
We've all got ridiculous imaginations as well. There was an absolutely brilliant one that I read called The Apparition Phase, which came out last year, which is one of my favourite ones that I read in a long time as well. I can never remember the author's surname. Is Will. The Apparition Phase. That's another absolute blinder. A scary book.
I'm gonna look it up now.
There's so many great writers doing so many great things. Particularly, I think. I mean, I was having this argument, or it wasn't an argument. Sorry, it was a debate. I beg your pardon. Just to make it a bit more PC. We were both on the same side. That was the thing. We were both on the same side with a writer friend of mine, and we were talking about the kind of relative sniffiness in certain quarters of critique about genre fiction.
Oh yeah.
Crime obviously is part of it, horror, sci-fi, that type of thing, and unless it's got that sort of kind of lit fic umbrella standing over it, then some people just will not go anywhere near it, and more importantly are rather boorish about the way that they tell you that they don't go anywhere near it. And then you think, I mean, you know, we've all had recommendations for each other tonight, and we are inundated with recommendations with these types of things, and this podcast is a great champion of recommendations. And you just think about how brilliant, you know, we ended the argument stroke debate with the rather pious conclusion that people that turn their noses up at genre fiction are missing out on so much wonderful stuff, and I suppose that's as friendly as it.
I mean, for me, there's no compliment that I'd like more for my work than for somebody to say, "Oh, you know, just couldn't put it down." You know, I wanted to go to sleep.
Absolutely.
I just think, how wonderful is that? You know,
yeah, absolutely.
Someone's sleep.
But
it is though. It's a lovely.
Which brings us nicely back to your book.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Lovely segue there. Total professional. Not like him. Not like Chris and I. You know, total ramblers. Total ramblers. Yeah. Where's the map?
Would you like to play a game at this point?
Oh, I don't know. It depends.
It's very, very easy.
Okay.
So, again, going back to Matt Veselovsky, he introduced this game to us. We used to play a different game and it wasn't as good as this. So it's called the 1-star game. And what I've done is, we play it every week. What I've done is I've found someone who's given one of your books a 1-star review, and there aren't many. But what I've done is I've looked at what else he has reviewed, and you just have to tell me whether he gave it 1 star or 5 star.
You kind of froze for a second, so I slightly didn't catch a tiny bit of that. So would you be able to just say it again? Sorry.
Yes, and then Rob can edit this out. So I looked at a 1-star review that you got.
Oh.
And there aren't many, but I'm not going to read that out.
Yeah.
But I looked at what else they reviewed, and this brings into our world an incredible, different people every week, but just the most incredible people who find, you know, a different way to see the world. So I've looked at what else they've reviewed, other items.
Very diplomatic of you, Chris. Hugely diplomatic.
Weirdos.
I thought you were going to buckle, you know, go implode into yourself there, the way that you were stepping on those eggshells, but well played.
So I've looked at what else they've reviewed, and I've picked 3 items, and you just need to tell me whether they got 1 star or 5 star.
Okay.
So the first one is a 2 times 500 piece jigsaw puzzle from a company called Gibson's. Did they like it or hate it?
I think they thought it was rubbish.
Okay, rubbish.
It's no Ravensburger, is it? It's not. It's not. If, you know, there's only one name in jigsaws for me.
You're going 1 star as well.
Do I get to play as well?
Oh, absolutely. Everybody plays.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna go 1 star.
Okay.
But it was a great jigsaw as well.
No, it was not. It was a 1-star jigsaw.
Oh, what was the jigsaw? What was the jigsaw of?
I can't remember. Something with the sky, I think, because these. Oh no, not this one. It said the jigsaw is horrible. The pieces will fit in more than one place, which makes a large area of sky impossible to do. Also, lots of the pieces have the back peeling off. I usually find Gibson's quality, but I'm very disappointed this time.
Fair dues, really.
Yeah, that's that. I mean, you know, it's like Gibson's. I hope you're listening. You had one job: make the pieces fit together. You don't want to get lost in an abyss of sky. Clearly.
And then she moved on to Ravensburger, 1,000
oh,
piece.
No way. Surely not.
She absolutely did. Almost Everyone is Mad, an Alice in Wonderland jigsaw.
I know what I'm picking, but Caroline,
I'm going to go for 5 stars.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm going to go 5 stars as well. Ravensburger is a quality product when it comes to jigsaws. It's the Bentley, it's the Rolls Royce of jigsaws.
Yeah, not to this person. Another 1 star. Over the last couple of years, the quality of Ravensburger has very much deteriorated.
See?
Often there are broken pieces and the jigsaw has 2 pieces missing. I contacted the company, but they haven't replied. Very disappointing.
Dreadful. Dreadful. I'm disappointed as well.
Yeah, you were loving them before this one.
I was. I feel jaded now. I feel it's like I'm. What? Why bother voting in the next election? You know, why bother getting up tomorrow to go to work? Stop. Everything I believed in, it was a lie.
Howling void of existence.
Just like that Sky in the Gibsons. Gibsons, was it Gibsons?
Sky per, this one per, which leads us on to the last item, which is a Rubik's Cube.
Oh.
What could be wrong with a Rubik's Cube?
1 star, because it was a bit clicky. Bit too clicky.
Bit too clicky, rightio.
I'm going to go 1 star because I now have a completely nihilist view on reality. So, what does anything mean?
Yeah, and what does it mean? Yeah, it is a 1 star.
No.
It arrived.
Oh no!
It arrived very scratched and didn't move well. Which,
well.
I mean, the prerequisite for a Rubik's Cube. Now, this person, the reason they only reviewed books or puzzles, and we found that books don't work too well in the past. They literally everything was 1 star. So,
oh, what about books? Were they harsh with books?
They hate it. Pretty much it. They got to about
puzzles.
It looked like a copy and review or a copy and pasting. It was like got to 40% was boring. Got to 50%. So they just didn't like life or spend like pastimes.
Listen, when you put all your faith in Ravensburger, and then they let you down. Even your jigsaw people let you down. What?
It's changed your life.
What else is there?
Exactly. We like to end the podcast with asking, what are you reading at the minute?
I am reading the forthcoming book by Louise Voss.
Oh,
fantastic writer Louise Voss, which is called I think it's called something His Other Wife. I'm really sorry, I've got the name of it wrong, but it's really original, and I think it's very hard to be original in our world. And the setup is a perfectly nice guy who has an accident, loses his memory, and she's set it up so cleverly in the way that she's done it that he really doesn't have any way of being very easily being found. And he starts to make a whole new life, and he already has a family and everything. I know at some point they're going to come into contact with each other, but she's done it so well. It's really, really good. But I have just not long ago finished Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers, which I just thought was absolutely brilliant. Oh, nice. And sorry, I get overexcited by this. The Devil in the Dark Water by Stu Turton.
Yes.
It's so good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very clever. Really
the funniest acknowledgements at the end as well.
Yeah.
Basically, like, I might have got stuff wrong, and I basically don't give a shit.
That Ravensburger, it's got a lot to answer for, I'm telling you.
What about yourself, JD?
I've got Robert Harris's V2 at the moment. I recently popped this on Twitter. I've never read any Robert Harris, which is, I know in certain circles, a cardinal sin.
Very good.
I mean, you know, this is the thing. I mean, this is the again, going back to what we were chatting about earlier on about how, you know, there are so many great writers out there doing so much great work. You've got to read them. You know, you've got to read them, and unfortunately, I've found over the last sort of, you know, 4 or 5 years that getting round to the giants of commercial fiction in the last 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years, or whatever it is, your Robert Harris's, for example, they just get put further and further down the to be read pile. And thankfully, I've got this one for review actually, and it's been that sort of jolt and the kick up the backside and shot in the arm to get me to sit down and read it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I absolutely enjoying it. I didn't go in with any sort of prerequisite, even though it's the mighty Robert Harris. And it's a lesson. It's, you know, as a writer, again, you don't need to tell you guys this. It's every book you read is a lesson on how to be better, and there are very, very, very few better at what they do than Mr. Harris.
Yeah. You sensibly gave one book, and I somehow gave 3.
I can only manage.
one.
It's all I can manage. I told you at the start, I'm not very bright. It's all a ruse.
I'm going to go in the middle, because I just finished A Man Named Doll today, which it's like a private investigator who just gets involved in all sorts of stuff. And I got Jonathan Ames, who I think wrote something famous. I can't remember what it was called.
Yeah,
You Were Never Really Here, or something was it called?
Yeah, I think so.
It was a superb. One of the best characters I've read in a long time, and I think it's the first in a series. So I think the next one's coming next year. But well worth your time. And I'm about to start reading I'll Pray When I'm Dying by Stephen Jay Goulds.
Is that the first ever edition?
This is the very first book to ever leave Red Dog. He lives very close to me now, my publisher, so I nip round just to sign books now and then. And I was very lucky to get this one. So his last book, Say Goodbye When I'm Gone, blew me away last year.
Yep. It's a brilliant read.
And this one, I'm led to believe, is even better. So I'm very much looking forward to dipping in.
Fantastic.
Smashing.
Well, Caroline, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you. It's been great.
If you haven't read, I'm not talking to Caroline now because she has read Sleep Tight, but if you have, I'm talking to you, the listener, if you have not read Sleep Tight, you really, really should. It is a fantastic book with characters that you will want to spend time with again, and a very good mystery inside it. So go and get it. And the inside of the hardback, I only noticed today, is a beautiful purple. So
that is a lovely purple.
Yeah, and if you don't love that, then there's something wrong with it.
A very regal purple.
Yeah, it is. A nice silver lettering on the spine. So
lovely.
A delight inside and out. And on that lovely note, we'll end it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Both of you.
Thank you. No, not at all.
It was
not
lovely.
At all.
And what a lovely way to spend a Monday. So
absolutely.
Thank you, and we will see you all again soon. Goodbye.